Howdy, all. Happy Monday. We are back with another Hockey Buzzcast. A few news items occurred late Friday and over the weekend that we'll talk about in the next hour, but we'll start with some pre-show stuff. And Russ, go ahead.
Well, I guess we won't talk about the Red Sox sweep.
Oh, no, we're going to talk about that because I'll bring it up.
Oh, okay. There was a note in the news recently, and I think it was in Nashville, where they've had some carjackings. And one car that two kids tried to carjack had a manual transmission. That's the kind of car I've driven for really my whole entire adult life. My first car was an automatic, and I had that for a short time. I switched to a stick, and I've never gone back. And it is harder and harder to get one. And I just saw in that article, 3% of all cars are manual transmission. But the kids could not steal the car because they couldn't drive a stick. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have to say that a friend, I've never driven a manual transmission except for once. My friend had, I can't even remember what the hell kind of car it was, but he said, "Oh, try it out." And it was like the bumpiest quarter mile because I couldn't do the clutch in the shift.
Yeah,
I mean, it's great when you know how to do it, and I'm sure it's a much more enjoyable ride. But it was so annoying that we were cavitating back and forth, and I'm like, screw this.
You know,
okay.
I was just going to say it's funny. I have an 18-year-old son who I tried to encourage with his car purchase to buy a standard car because I said it'll take you a week, and I said there's no hills in Manitoba because that's where everyone fails to the standard car. It's so flat you can watch your dog run away for a week, so you'll learn really fast. And I said once you know it, it's like riding a bike, and you never forget. I learned on a standard. I drove a standard for years, and the great thing about it is you adjust to the clutch. But it's a totally who cares if they're going the way of the dodo? It's a skill you should learn. Mike, you just don't have any foot-hand coordination. That's the bigger issue.
Great, and that is an old wives' tale. You can learn how to, or you can forget how to ride a bike. I didn't ride a bike for 15 years, and I bought a bike for exercise purposes and took it out to a local park, and I fell down a couple times.
You're kidding.
You're just special, Mike. But the funny thing is, Peter, when I learned how to drive a stick, I had a friend's mom who taught me first, and she had this old Ford. Yeah, it was an old Ford, and it was up on the panel, which makes it even harder, right? Because they don't even make those anymore, but the dad was a mechanic. So that was kind of interesting. And then my own dad basically taught me on a hill. So he brought me to the biggest hill in town. And that's so what Peter's saying is he didn't learn how to do a stick on the hill. My dad took me right to the biggest hill in town and said, "You got to be able to deal with this."
I think I'm the only person in the world who had, and believe me, back in the day, I had an F-150 truck, and I went to go visit some friends in downstate New York for New Year's, and of course I drove through a blizzard to get to their place, which was an hour outside of New York, and they lived at the top of a hill. And it was not a four-wheel drive F-150. It was just rear wheel. And it took me about 45 minutes to get up this icy hill because I had no weight in the back, and my wheels had no traction, so I couldn't get up the hill even with a friggin' pickup truck.
Oh yeah,
it's fun. It's fun to drive a stick. I mean, sometimes you get Sometimes you can get I've had over 200,000 on a clutch. This clutch I just got about 85. So you never know. But it's the same with a regular car. You always have to get a transmission overhaul at some point anyhow. But I just think it's more fun. It keeps me alert. And actually, I think the stopping distance is better. It's shorter.
You can use the gears to slow you down and stop. Yeah. And you know what? If you drive a little more, if you learn how to drive one really well, you can actually make it quite fuel efficient too, and your brakes will last longer as well. Yeah. I actually had the pleasure of whipping around some California hills back in the beginning of June in my brother-in-law's 911, and that was a lot of fun. And really being able to gun it and use the gears and fly around, and you just don't get that opportunity very often, and you never want to drive it in an automatic when you could drive it with a standard.
Now, switching to sports here, not hockey, and then we'll get to hockey in a second. There's nothing more painful than the team that you root for losing to their biggest rival, especially when most of the fans of their biggest rival are a bunch of buttheads. And that's the case.
That includes Ty Anderson.
No, well, Ty's a reporter.
Fan. Don't stay away from it, Mike.
Ty's a reporter, so but I mean, honestly, the obnoxiousness of Red Sox fans is beyond belief, and you have to give them credit. The Yankees went in there a semi-wounded team and played terribly for 3 of the 4 games, and then last night had a 4-1 lead in the 9th inning, and Aroldis Chapman blew the save, and then they lost in the 10th inning. And I just harken back to going to hockey, where it's like, if the Leafs ever play the Habs in the playoffs, the worst loss they will ever feel is a loss to the Habs, because everybody hates them in Toronto. The feeling that you think that the feeling is bad when they lose to Boston, who's sort of a newer rival. It's gonna be so much worse if they ever get to the playoffs and lose to the Habs, or even the Sabres, who they don't consider a rival. And Russ, I mean, if the Rangers lose to the Islanders, that's the worst loss, right?
Oh yeah, I lived through them. The time losses. I can tell you the losses in big games when the Islanders were going through their heyday. Yeah, it's horrible.
And Peter, is it Edmonton? Is it if Winnipeg ever plays Edmonton? Or I mean,
you know what? I don't. You know what? For guys who were Jets fans back in the 80s and 90s, there's some long-term pain from that 1990 3-1 lead series over the Oilers. But there really isn't, I think, a true rivalry yet for the Jets, where there's some hatred. Probably Minnesota, after that playoff series this year, is going to come back in, and that's going to pick up a little bit. But there really isn't anything yet that really would sting, and maybe another year of meeting the playoffs between the Jets and Minnesota would do well. They'd start hating each other. Get the hate on a little bit more, but there isn't someone there. But for long-term fans, it's definitely Edmonton. Yeah,
and right now for Toronto, since they're 2 of their 3 most recent early exits has been at the hands of the Bruins. I mean, they would love to play the Bruins and actually beat them and sort of revenge the 2013 and 2018 losses. But we haven't seen a Leafs-Habs playoff series since 1979. We haven't seen a Leafs-Sabres matchup since 1999. That was the only time the 2 teams have ever met in the postseason. And Buffalo, on the back of Dominic Hasek and Dwayne Rollison, beat them in 5 games. It was not a great Sabres team. It wasn't a great Leafs team, but it was 2 teams based on goaltending, and Rollison and Hasek outdueled Cujo. So but I can just imagine what the sort of byplay on social media will be between Habs fans and Leafs fans, or Leafs fans and Sabres fans, if those teams play in the playoffs. It'll be bizarre. It'll be wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think what we can also hope, and if you're in the Western Conference here, you also want to see a Battle of Alberta again. I mean, there's your Western version of hatred.
Yeah. No, I know, definitely. I mean, is Steve Smith still reviled in Edmonton?
Probably. I think they have a bust of him somewhere in Calgary.
All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, August 6th, 2018.
I'm Peter Tessier in Winnipeg.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Now I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. We'll talk about a few things today and take your questions in the latter half of the show, so wait until I give the signal and send your questions. We'll start with the signing of, and it came out of nowhere because he has a year left in his contract, but Anaheim extended goaltender John Gibson for 8 years, the max extension at $6.4 million per. Russ, you first. I mean, I've long been a fan of Gibson. The concern I've had with him is his recurrent injury problems. They seem to happen at the worst possible time. Remember 2 years ago, he got hurt in the conference final that forced him to use Jonathan Bernier, and that cost him a chance to the Stanley Cup. Last year, they were smart in signing veteran Ryan Miller, and Miller had to play down the stretch, but Gibson did come back, and they lost early in the playoffs. But Gibson is 25 years old, and this is a contract that locks him up through his prime for a pretty reasonable amount. What do you think?
No, I think it's a great deal for both sides. I mean, there's something that's a little different about John Gibson in a leadership way, and I noticed it early on in him. I remember when he got sent down to the AHL once, and I was covering some AHL games, and I talked to the guys down there, and I even talked to him down there, and there was no difference. There was no pouting. He just loves to play hockey. Now, I did a little, digging, and he is the 5th highest goalie AAV, which is really good. If you think about that, and this is not like a Rick DiPietro contract. I think this contract is the furthest you would ever want to take it, but it's the limit for the league, and I think for the AAV, it's worth it. Maybe in the last year you have to sweat it out, but I don't think teams worry about that. But last year he played 60 games. The year before he played 52. His career save percentage is a .923. So, say what you want about that. If you look him up, and here's the funny thing. It's easy to pigeonhole him. I know that's happened on this show. But when you look up his stats, he's a top 10 goalie in all the stats that matter.
There's probably 10 teams who would like to have the opportunity to even talk to a goalie under contract on their own team and think 6 or 7 to 8 years of a contract. Like that's kind of where the state of goaltending is in the NHL.
Right.
I think, Gibson will be 26 when this deal kicks in next year.
Yes.
That takes him to 34. The last 2 to 3 years could be iffy. But if that's what keeps the AAV down, which is what we know usually happens, is the term to keep the AAV down. You probably, and if you budget, if you manage him for 55 to 65 games, and that's what your expectation is, and you can manage that with supplementary goaltending, you probably got yourself nice cap stability in a long-term position. I personally, I wouldn't want to go that long, but I can understand why they did, given his age and what he's done up to this date. And it's a less risky deal than, say, what the Jets just did with Connor Hellebuck, who has really one good season, but they do have very similar numbers.
Well, that was what I was going to bring up, is the fact that they're the same age. Yeah. Both U.S. goaltenders. Probably if the U.S. goes to the Olympics in 2022, they'll probably be one of the 2 of the 3 goaltenders that are on that team. Hellebuck signed 6 years, 6.16. Now Gibson signed 8 years, 6.4. Gibson's got a little bit longer of a track record, but I think I like the Hellebuck deal more, even though he's only put up 1 year and it's 2 years shorter, because I think it's less risky just because of the 6 years.
Yeah, I think I think it's a little less risky because of 6 years, but it's different risks is that he doesn't have the same track record as Gibson, but he's managed to stay healthy. So it's all it's all how you weight risk, right?
It is.
This is about weighting the risk for each player, and I don't really have a problem with this deal. I've seen some grumbling about it, but there's a lot of underlying stats that really support the fact that if you were going to do it with a goaltender at that age, John Gibson's about the best one you could do it with. So I think good work on Anaheim.
Here's the other part that I was going to say about the Hellebuck deal. You like it for the 6 years, but if he turns out to be like a Marc-Andre Fleury, Henrik Lundqvist type in that 7th year, you're not going to like it, because then he's going to look for another big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the downside of that.
Yeah. Now you said that Gibson would be 6th on the list. Carey Price is making 10.5, Lundqvist at 8.5, Bobrovsky at 7.4, and he's a UFA after this season. Pekka Rinne at $7 million, he's a UFA after this season, and Tuukka Rask. So the one thing that I see here, and we know that Bobrovsky's only 29, so he'll be 30 when he gets that new deal from Columbus or whoever. He's already making 7.4, and based on what he's done in Columbus, I could see him breaking. I could see him pulling up right next to Lundqvist at 8.5 or something of that nature, Russ, depending on how long the deal is.
Yeah. It's interesting. All the goalies you mentioned, the one goalie who hasn't made it to the Stanley Cup is Carey Price, and I'm not sure any of us would have said that was going to be the case. And again, it's not all on him. I know Ranger fans blame it all on Lundqvist that they haven't won a Stanley Cup, but they did still make it, and he was the biggest reason they made it that year. But so it does show that if you do it right, it does work for you. And I think that's the key. I mean, again, like a quarterback, goaltending is so important. I mean, you could just look at the St. Louis Blues, and we always say, hey, if that goaltending was just a little bit better, where would they be?
Yeah. So, Russ, you make a really good point. If you go and look at Stanley Cup winning goalies and Stanley Cup appearing goalies, look at where their salary range was. And you realize you got to pay for goaltending.
You do.
You really do. But first you have to identify who you should be paying. And I think that's where some teams get it wrong. I think, Mike, just to bring it back to the Leafs, because all things matter with, in the world when we, bring it to back, don't bring it back to the Leafs. That deal for Gibson is going to be very interesting when Freddie Anderson has to re-sign in 2 years?
3. He's got. There was a. Yeah, I mean that's the one. And
3.
Yeah,
it was
3
2.
years. It was a 5-year deal.
Oh, I thought I've got okay. Anyways, yeah. So imagine what the inflation on that's going to be if he keeps his current trajectory.
Well, I think it all depends. Well, that's the thing. It all depends on. And Gibson had success getting them to the third round of the playoffs. It's all going to depend with Freddie Anderson on how far do they get in the next 3 years. And that's not all going to be on him. I think it's also incumbent on Kyle Dubas to improve their defense. The offense is going to be fine. It's going to be fantastic. But you cannot depend on Frederik Anderson as they did last year to play 66 games and face the most shots in the NHL with what I would say, and this is being kind, an average at best defense, and then expect him to carry you through 3 rounds in the playoffs. That's the formula that Edmonton followed with Cam Talbot 2 years ago, and he stood on his head and they got to the second round. But it's not something you can plan on. You need a solid defense in front of the goaltender to enable him to be able to carry you through rounds.
The other thing is, because it's such a mentally taxing position, most goalies hit their prime at 25. The ones that don't, the savants, or have the ones that go hot really young, sometimes don't have the greatest of careers. Like Cam Ward got really hot really young, right? I mean, you see those kinds of guys too, and Murray, but most of them are right around 24, 25 years old when it all starts going the right way. So that's another reason why locking up these years on this deal are smart.
And Marc-Andre Fleury signed his extension at $7 million, so he's another one who's ahead of Gibson, but he's in his 30s, and that's only for 3 years. But I think that what the last couple deals have set is the new benchmark for a young goaltender, for the goalie in his prime. The goalie, Bobrovsky will be 30. Rene is going to be 36, I believe, so they won't really apply. But if there's a goaltender who comes up, in the next couple of years, Holtby is what? Holtby's got a Stanley Cup under his belt, and Holtby is 28, and I believe he has a couple years left. So he might, he's up after 19, 20. With a cup under his belt, he's going to probably ask for 7.5, and that might be the place, Russ, where they walk away from him and they go to Samsonov.
Yeah, but Columbus isn't in that situation. And the other thing that I wrote with this same tweet that I've been giving you the information from is basically for Bobrovsky's sake, and I think he makes around 8, something crazy like that.
7.4.
7.4, right. So he's going to want about 8, and they're not going to give him a long-term deal at 8. Like, there is an age now where they definitely only will give you that kind of money, the Lundqvist price, whatever, the bigger money, but much shorter term deal. So he's probably only going to get offered a 3 to 4 year deal, and that's it.
I'll bet you anything.
Which makes you wonder what the heck Bergevin was thinking with Price's deal.
Oh my God, it's I look at that deal, Peter. I look at that deal compared to the other goaltenders, and I'm not saying John Gibson's a really fine goaltender. So is Hellebuck, but Price is better. But is he $4 million better?
No, and that's the point. And Russ, like, I mean, that's when you mentioned Price, and I agree. He's worth that money, but he's worth that money when you had way more around him. Like, he's not worth that money. No one's paying Carey Price that much on the open market.
No.
So why did you have to trump the open market to keep him? And I guess this is the weird thing, right? And he was 29 when he signed that deal.
Yes.
It's ludicrous, right?
Yeah.
Like,
wasn't great, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think I'm going out on a limb here and saying that I seriously doubt that Carey Price is going to finish that contract in Montreal. But the question is, will he finish the first half of that contract in Montreal? I mean, they're going through a rebuild right now. They may not want to call it that, but they are. Shea Weber is going to be out until at least January. So I don't know whether you can say that they're going to be in the playoff race this year. Well, probably.
I don't think you can. And
right.
They're again, there's a few teams in the league where you try to figure out what exactly is their long-term plan. What are they trying to do? And the Habs are one, the Canucks are another. I think the Oilers are partially in that thing. The Coyotes certainly are. And you just scratch your head, like, how do you end up in this sort of rudderless situation yet spending all this money?
Yeah, it's I mean, if I had to plot out the 3 or 4 teams that had the worst summer, Montreal would be near the top, because there's
too. I mean, I just saw something posted on NewJersey.com, and it was kind of laughable. It's like, well, if you're mad at the Devils for not making any deals, here's like the worst contracts of 2016. And it's like, not making a move doesn't mean it was good,
right.
And doesn't mean just because you didn't make a move, you're not going to have a bad contract in that.
Yeah.
Way. Like that's a bad way. I get that people are looking for clicks these days, but the headline was way off for what Devils fans should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, if the move you didn't make was getting into a bidding war for a dubious talent, congratulations. That's a good move. But if the move you didn't make was just because you didn't do anything, that's not good either.
No.
Now, what I consider a sort of a good compromise in arbitration was made over the weekend. William Karlsson was one of the most impressive years of last year, 43 goals for Vegas, and Vegas gets to the Stanley Cup final, and he was on a contract for less than $1 million. He was an RFA. He asked for a sizable chunk. I think he asked for $7 million. Him and the Vegas Golden Knights reached a compromise on a 1-year deal for $5.25. Now, the thing is that they're going to go through this again next year, but I don't think that there'll be as much of a hesitancy, Russ, for Vegas to sign him to a long-term extension if he comes anywhere close to repeating what he did this year. This is a prove it. This is a put up good numbers and we'll pay you, but this is a prove it to me type of deal.
He's got to get over 20 goals. If he comes short of 20 goals after a 41 goal season, he's going to have a problem, and they're not going to give him a long-term deal.
I don't. They're not going to give him a long-term deal at significant money. But if he scores 20, you can't sneeze it. You can't sneeze away 20 goals anymore.
No, but he won't want to sign long-term deal, Peter. That's the difference. He would rather roll the dice on another season again, probably.
Yeah, and I think if he touches 30, though,
if
he touches 30, he's at 6.5 plus.
Yeah, and I heard some people say that the addition of Paul Stastny will take ice time away from Karlsson, and that'll make him getting close to 43 goals not near impossible, but less likely. So, but yeah, if he scores 30 goals, then I don't think there's any hesitancy on the part of George McPhee to sign him long term. He's young. He'd had 2 good years in a row. It would make sense to lock him up. But
yeah, and Mike brought up a good point in the chat room. Like, teams are more aware of him. nobody was game planning for William Karlsson the first couple of months when he was piling up goals either. So, now he's a target. So he's got to really,
And the presence of Stastny will help him in that respect because, it'll be a second guy who teams will have to pay attention to.
Hey, I've got a good transition from Stastny. So I wrote an article over the weekend about the Hughes brothers, and I mentioned some brother combos, and just to kind of stop all the trolls, I didn't name every brother combo that's ever played in the NHL. I didn't, but I named a bunch of fun ones. And that's the other thing of this. It's not all NHL related. These brothers all played together, but it doesn't mean they played together in the NHL. And you'll see when I give out the list. But I used like Bill and Bung Cook. They did play together in the NHL. The Sedins did. Peter Anton and Marian Stastny played in the WHA, right?
And they ended up playing together with the Nordiques in the NHL.
Yeah, the NHL maybe for a couple of years. Yeah. Dennis and Phil. Bobby and Dennis Hull, sorry. Phil and Tony didn't play together in the NHL, but played together in the Summit Series and All-Star games. Henry and Maurice Richard. And now we have Jack and Quinn Hughes. And so we saw them. But if you want to comment anyhow on the brother combos, it's always fun.
Brian and Joey Mullen.
Yeah, that's a real good one.
Sutters,
there's too many, and I just didn't feel like.
Yeah, no, I know it. It's difficult. You know what's interesting? If you start now looking at you just particularly with the Sutters because they have family now playing, like the next generation is playing. Stastny, the next generation is playing.
Yeah,
you can almost start. In a few years, you can almost start doing Kachuk's next playing generationally. Which family generation would you want to have all at the same time? If they're all in their prime, which would be a very interesting discussion to have. And I still think the Stasnys win because they were amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's going to be some guy who just says, well, I'll just take Gretzky anyways. He's the one family himself, but who cares?
Well, how about
Aaron? That's like the Hank Aaron, Tommy Aaron home run,
Well, how about Wayne and Brent Gretzky?
Right.
Brent had won and Wayne had how about Sylvain and Pierre Turgeon? I think Sylvain Turgeon was a second overall pick.
Yeah.
And Pierre was number 1, which is
I mean, in the chat room they named the Cordonal brothers. There's a ton. But the
the Hunter brothers.
Oh yeah. This one, if you like goons. This one this one was weighted towards the USA Hockey perspective because they'll both be in the World Juniors. And when Mike was saying for 2022, they'll be on that Olympic team. Yeah. You put these guys on the ice at the same time and it's magic. And you could already start to see it. And it's unbelievable. Like Jack has this just innate way of finding these open spaces for himself and for other players. And Quinn could either take the puck up the ice or he could make that great first pass up the ice. He could do it either way.
Yep.
And it's just, in a couple of those games, Quinn was just skating around guys looking for someone to get open, and they eventually would, like a basketball player.
Don't assume in 2022 if the NHL does go to the Olympics that Canada is going to be the overwhelming favorite, because if you think about it, the U.S. is going to have Eichel and Matthews as their top 2 centers.
Yeah.
Guys like Werenski and Seth Jones on defense. And then I'm just doing this off the top of my head. Trouba, Gibson, and Hellebuck in goal. The generation of Kane and those guys will probably be over with because Kane is I think he's 30 or 31 now. So 35 then maybe he makes it, but
he'll make it. He'll still make it.
But and don't get me wrong, Canada is going to be fantastic with McDavid, but the US, the last couple Olympics, they've been hurting in terms of up the middle. They've been really weak. They're not weak up the middle anymore. So Galchenyuk could be a US Olympian actually. So
somebody mentioned the Rutu brothers. Like, come on, man, that's just like
the Rutu brothers. That's brilliant.
Cuomo, come on. Jesus.
But the thing is with the Hughes is it's Jack will be number 1 this year. Quinn will be in the NHL next year.
No, I'm sorry. I know it's impossible to not fix it, but to but you can put yourself in a pretty good position to be able to do this. And I'm sorry, if you look at Vancouver and they got Quinn Hughes, they should be doing everything they possibly can to tank.
I mean, here's the thing: they'll have a chance.
They did, Mike. They signed Jay Beagle for 3 years. And, like,
they'll have.
I mean, they're actually trying not to tank, but going to tank anyways because they're so inept at trying to figure out what to do.
Look, if they're one of the 6 or 7 worst teams, they'll have a pretty good shot at them. So I think they will. And then after that, and again, I didn't want to make this an NHL article, but for discussion's sake, yeah, do you think that they'll be calling whoever gets that first overall pick? Absolutely. I think they would make a massive offer.
Yeah. I mean,
absolutely, they should.
It would have to probably be, and I'm just, say they have the 6th pick and they're trying to move up to number 1.
Oh.
What they would have to do to move up 5 picks would be Horvat and something big.
Yeah, I'll give him Horvat and my first pick that year, my first pick the next year. I'm going to start going more like Ditka-ish on this.
Yeah, I know. You know what? It would be a 21st Horvat and the 6th. Like say that. That'd be your starter.
Yeah, and they would include the rolling paper for Ricky Williams, right, Russ?
But I mean, from the marketability standpoint, from the we had the Sedins and this could work great standpoint, yeah, it would be pretty special. I'm sure they'll try.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Now, and they may not. They may even succeed, even though they don't have just for lack of.
Another thing too, for people that haven't watched the tournament, I don't blame you. It's a pre-tournament. It's not like it's great action. It's okay action. There was one point where Flyers draft pick Adam Ginning leveled Jack Hughes, and Hughes got right back up. And so for people that are worried that, hey, he's only 165 pounds, it's not a big deal. It's just not.
Yeah.
And so right now, I don't even worry. That's the only time I've ever seen him clocked for the times I've seen him play. So it doesn't happen very often either.
Now,
yeah, Russ, I saw some stuff based on this tournament that said if you had to redo the draft over again, they said there's no way Hughes would have been available at 4, let alone 7.
7 was just dumb. Like, I just didn't get that. But I'm going to tell you what's dumber, though. What was dumber? What did Noah Dobson go? 12?
Yeah.
That people are going to look back at that, and that will be worse because, again, here's the thing about Dobson. And this is why I rated Dobson higher than Hughes. Hughes is the better guy to watch, right? He's more exciting. He dashes around on the ice. He's great with his edges. Noah Dobson just does everything right. And he had a 2-goal game where he brought Canada back when they were down 2 goals, and he always gets points, and you forget that he gets points because he's such a good defender too.
Well, before I suffered heat stroke in Dallas, the one thing that puzzled me was, I mean, because we were talking about who was going to go where before the draft, and everybody was saying Dobson was there was no way he was dropping out of the top 10. Maybe he goes in the top 5. He definitely goes in the 6, 7, 8, and he ends up going 12 to the Islanders. And I was like, oh my God! I mean, the defensemen, Bouchard and him, slipped significantly.
Kravtsov, Kotkaniemi, Hayton made him drop.
Yeah, and but a guy like Boquist going, what was it, 8th to Chicago?
Well, that's a team saying we want a power play guy. We'll fix the rest or make it work for us. And so, like, if you say, is he the best power play guy in that draft? I might still argue Quinn Hughes, but at least you get a closer argument that way.
Yeah. Now, another thing that happened, I believe it happened after our show. If it didn't, maybe I mentioned it on the show, but we didn't get a chance to really explore it too much. The rules regarding buyouts is if a player goes to arbitration, there is a secondary window for buyouts. And Calgary took advantage of that and bought out the final 2 years of Troy Brouwer's deal. Now he was $4.5 million for the next 2 years, so that means they'll take a cap hit of $1.5 million for the next 4 years to buy out the final 2 years of his deal. Now they have players that I'm not looking at their cap right now, but They have players they want to sign. They have players that they're looking to extend. So that's a good saving. And I would assume one guy they want to sign and extend is Noah Hannafin.
Hannafin's the one they're focused on right now.
Yeah, but I mean the Brouwer thing, and you saw him more than we did, Peter. The Brouwer thing, it never worked in Calgary. I mean, did he just slow down and that was it?
But I mean, there were other things. I think what they needed Brouwer for never materialized either. That's the other thing. Like the Flames should, in all theory, have been a playoff team this year, and it didn't go right. And that's where that's where Brouwer's value comes in. Now, his value at that salary isn't there, in my opinion, but for them is why they want Brouwer on the team. It was simply because they needed that as part of their playoff sort of package that they wanted to present. They just never got there.
Right. Russ, I mean, does he get a job? Does somebody take a chance on him, or is this
invite him into camp because he's still a gritty player. He still can play a little penalty kill. He can do things that at least, are useful to a team. So he'll end up somewhere.
Yeah, he might be willing because he's getting the buyout money to take a 1-year minimum deal someplace like Washington, where he was before, or Chicago, or San Jose, places he's been before, where he might say, okay, I'll go there cheap and take a chance.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what he'll do. And so he might even wait ridiculously long to see if he can get to a cup contender.
Yeah. Now we'll take some questions in the chat in a minute here after we talk about Ryan Johansson and Ryan Kesler. So start putting your questions in the chat now. I saw this in doing a little bit of research for the show. I thought it was sort of humorous, and I was sort of thinking, if we could go back and have war of words that were conveyed via social media. I mean, the social media didn't exist 10 years ago, or at least it didn't exist in widespread in a widespread way until the last few years. But I can think of some rivalries, and what I'm talking about here is Ryan Johansson and Ryan Kesler, who played against each other in the conference final 2 years ago. Ryan Kesler went on Twitter and said, "How's summer training going? Want to meet me in the streets before we get going on the ice?" And Ryan Johansson responded, "I'll pay for the parking." Now, Russ, you're saying that you think this is a bit contrived?
Yeah, I think it is. I think this is two guys having fun. They have the same agent. They know they face each other. Like, let's be real about something. Even if a player tells you they really dislike or hate another team, there is some truth to that. But there's so many friends and buddies now in all of sports, especially after the fact that you don't even know about, that 20 years ago would have been frowned on. Now you can't even worry about it. And I just think these guys, they've realized what they can do with social media and decided to have some fun.
Peter,
I think there's a little, Russ, I can sort of see where you're going, but then, their history between the two is, they've been chucking knuckles before, and there's someone in that thread put up some photos, stills of Kesler just wailing on Johansson as he was on the ice. I get it. I think there's only two players in the league who have no friends outside of their teammates, and that was Burroughs and Marchand. I don't think either of them have friends. I don't even think their mothers like them, telling you the honest truth. But
nice.
But that's a whole other thing. I mean, just because you share an agent doesn't mean you're buddies. You just happen to have a common business partner in things. I do think there's probably a little bit of humor and maybe kind of, poking at each other a bit. Maybe it's good natured. Maybe it leads to something. Maybe it doesn't. But, the first time those two teams meet, and if they go and chuck knuckles, then we're going to have our answer.
Yeah, but see, again, that's even nowadays, I've spoken to so many guys that if they're hockey players, they will fight a friend of theirs on the other team. They will. They like to do it. This is something where you can't get in the head.
So mental.
I know. We can't get in that headspace. We don't understand that, but these guys like that.
And the ironic thing here is that Kessler's sort of egging on Johansson. Kessler's not going to be in the. They say Kessler's not going to play this year, so it's funny that
I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear that.
Oh yeah, they're saying that Kesler may sit out the season with the back problems that he's had.
Oh,
I
man.
heard that about Zetterberg, and even that's quieted down. I don't think for Kessler.
Well, no, with Zetterberg, they said basically have been saying he's going to play out this year, and then when his contract goes down to the $1 million money figure, that he may go home and play in the SHL for a couple of years. That he may do a Datsu. But no, there's been significant talk that Kessler, because of whatever back or shoulder problem that he's had, that they've counseled him on maybe sitting out the entire year and then coming back the following year, which may be the reason why they locked up Adam Henrique, because his Kessler's future is in doubt. Just quickly here, I just as again summer fodder here. The NHL Network put out their list of top 20 centers, and the one thing that struck me, and I'll read off the list here, and we'll just get your quick thoughts on this because I want to take a few questions. But a few years ago, it was arguable that Jonathan Toews, it was Toews and Crosby and Toews. This was not a long time ago. This was 2-3 years ago. Jonathan Toews is not on the top 20 list at all.
I don't think he should be.
Actually, just to get back to Kessler real quick, it was a hip injury, and they said they're gonna really rehab the heck out of it. I don't think he'll miss the season.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's right. It was hip.
And I think he's had that before too. Russ.
Yeah, it's a chronic. It's a chronic.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see, but there has been talk about him sitting out the entire season.
Same chronic issue as my diarrhea of the mouth. Like, it's the same thing.
Okay. So Toews is not in the the top 20. Here is the list. I'll go 1 through 5 and tell me if you think there are any things that stand out positively, or if you think there's any misrepresentation here. The top 5: McDavid 1, Crosby 2, Malkin 3, Matthews 4, McKinnon 5.
I put McKinnon ahead of Matthews.
Yeah, I think he's ahead of Matthews too.
I'd put Crosby.
Nathan McKinnon is a beast. Like, he just doesn't get enough publicity because he plays in Colorado.
Right. I'd put Crosby ahead of McDavid.
This Mike, I didn't, because I was looking up something.
NHL Network.
Okay.
I'd put Crosby ahead of McDavid. I think Matthews and McKinnon are pretty much.
We could argue Crosby and McDavid all day. Yeah. I don't care if it goes 1-2. That doesn't bother me. But I think McKinnon right now is ahead of Matthews.
Yeah. Okay. What's the next one?
6 through 10. 6 Kopitar, 7 Scheifele, 8 Bergeron, 9 Sagan, 10 Tavares.
Okay, well, first off, I would still put Tavares ahead of Sagan, because Tavares is more of a valuable player all around. And I think I would have Scheifele ahead of Kopitar. Again, Kopitar had a really great year, and I get all the little things he does, but I think Scheifele's still living off the bad reputation early part of his career. Like, you have to look at what the player is now, and he's a pretty dominant player.
You know what's interesting is I don't know if I put Scheifele ahead of Kopitar. I think he'll get there. I think after this season he will. It'll be obvious that he is. But Kopitar had a really good year. Yeah. Is it sustainable going longer? I don't know, because he's been in the league a lot longer.
Well, I agree. I agree with Russ. I would put Tavares ahead of Sagan, so that's Tavares 9. I would put. I mean, in a 1-year window, I'm putting Bergeron ahead of both Kopitar and Scheifele. Bergeron is still a.
It's the right year you could do.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, and I'll say this, but I want to hear your 11 through 15 here, because if the name isn't there, then I'm going to bring it in. Okay,
11 Stamkos, which I think is misrepresentation because he played a lot of the year on the wing. So 11 Stamkos, 12 Kuznetsov, 13 Barkov, 14 Nicholas Backstrom, 15 Jack Eichel.
All right, so you got to do the one more time.
Yeah, wow.
Stamkos, Kuznetsov, Barkov, Backstrom, Eichel.
I mean, to be fair, Backstrom is better than Barkov. Let's not overinflate Barkov early on here. He's had a career. Backstrom may even move up 2 slots on there in my eyes.
Backstrom is considered the #1 center on Washington. How can he not be rated higher than Kuznetsov?
Right, and that's the other point. I think they're going with like potential and flash and all those other things. You know, I think Nick Backstrom has done it for a really long time. too quietly, and I think that's the problem.
I think because
I think.
Go ahead.
I also think someone like Barkov gets discounted because Florida's another team that up, down,
Sure.
up, like you don't know what they are, right? Like if they could get stabilized and you could see what they really are and be in that proper upward trajectory, I think a lot more people would appreciate Barkov and he'd put up some better numbers. But the guy is a wicked player.
I think because
he's a terrific player, but we're talking about 5 seasons of play. Last year he finally played 79 games. Like he's missed a lot of games. He has 249 points in 331 games. Like that's really good.
Yeah.
But if I get down to the points per game thing, and we could say, hey, he plays for Florida, but McKinnon plays for Colorado. Like it is what it is.
Okay.
He is at 0.75 points per game. Now I'll look at Backstrom, who's had a longer career, and just see where he's at.
Yeah, I think Kuznetsov is ranked higher than Backstrom because of this.
Yeah.
Because the stupid goal celebration.
Yeah.
Okay, what's 16 through 20?
Okay.
What's 16 through 20?
16 through 20. 16 Matthew Barzal.
Here's the number. Ready?
Yeah.
Backstrom is 0.98 points per game in a much longer career. How could Barkov be?
Yeah.
I know he's great defensively, but so's Backstrom.
Okay.
Yeah.
16 through 20. 16 Matthew Barzal, 17 William Karlsson, 18 Sean Couturier, 19 Ryan Getzlaf, and 20 Leon Draisaitl.
Okay. I don't think Getzlaf should be in the list, and I think Couturier is way better than that.
Yeah. Couturier at least one spot higher, at least
one. So I would put him honestly in the 11 to 15.
And I think Draisaitl's 3 slots higher, to be honest.
Yeah.
But Draisaitl isn't. I mean, Draisaitl played more than half of the year on the wing with McDavid. So does he really qualify as a center?
I mean,
well, this is the thing. What
tacky? Then no.
Then why isn't Claude Giroux on the list too?
Well, he didn't play any center last year.
He's listed as a center on NHL.com.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
He got moved.
They're out to lunch with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, an interesting list. So, Russ, we have any questions?
Claude Giroux is a center on the awards. People ripped you on Twitter because he didn't play it. So, that's one of those things where even though it's on the league website, you have to know.
Yeah.
Any questions in the chat?
You think the league would know too?
yeah. You really know about Alex Ovechkin, didn't they?
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say on that one. All right. Questions. Let's see. This is from Drew. Will McDavid get frustrated soon with the Oilers and want out, or will they finally fire Chiarelli? Trust me when I tell you this, Connor McDavid will outlive Peter Chiarelli.
Yes.
And both from a health aspect and a career aspect.
Yes. I don't want to go there, Peter. That's a little morbid, but yes.
But the thing is, though, I mean, yeah, there could be a level of frustration. What the shame is right now is that you're throwing away the young, vital years of McDavid with this sort of like mediocrity that the Oilers have just perpetuated with some bad decisions, some bad signings, some bad trades, and maybe eventually they'll get it straightened out. But how many years of McDavid do they waste doing that?
True. I did have to laugh when Steve said, are Tuukka Rask and Victor Rask brothers? No, but that would be like a lot of guys named Smith not being related either, right?
Yeah.
Well, Riley.
But not all the Hunters are related either.
Right. All right. So
Riley Smith and Brendan Smith are related.
So Fash Out wants to know who's better, Matthews or McKinnon. Last year, McKinnon was better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, Matthews was hurt 3 times.
Yeah.
3 separate injuries.
You know what? One of the things that's really interesting about these debates of who's better, and I've kind of, we have rankings and we do this stuff. You don't need Matthews to be better than McKinnon. Like, what does that? You need Matthews to be better for his team than McKinnon is
but this
for
is
his team.
Fodder, Peter. That's all it is.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. I'm just saying. But I think a lot of fans get really hung up on comparisons, and you say, well, you could say McKinnon is a better player. Maybe he had a better season, but it doesn't mean he's any more valuable to his team than Matthews is to
Right, but it's like
the Leafs.
It's like if we rated everybody on this show, clearly I'd be number one and Eck would fall number 3.
Yeah, sure.
Eck would fall behind Peter probably, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's just
Sorry, I'm losing my positioning here with my phone.
Okay. Well, we get
There
it.
you go.
So, too dope, and it's not a TOO, it's a TO, so I don't understand it. But what do you think of RNH for Justin Falk? I think that's a fair deal. I think that's a deal I would really consider if I were Carolina, and I might make it now because I don't know what I'm going to be able to get for Justin Falk at the deadline if he has another off year.
There's only one little problem. The problem is that RNH makes more than Justin Falk, and that means Carolina will never make the deal.
Well, sometimes you have to pay money, right?
You might have to throw in a draft pick if you're Chiarelli.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know whether Edmonton would do that.
Well, I think Edmonton's too gun shy to do anything.
Yeah, I don't know if
that's the problem. Is I think they're in a state of what the hell do we do next? And the next thing we do, we better not screw it up, which is a really bad state to be in.
I mean, right now, the funny thing is, it's like, we're a month away from training camp, and I don't think it's going to be massively big money, but, they haven't signed Darnell Nurse yet. They have a ton of cap space, but it's all a question of how much are you going to spend on a player. And he's 23 years old, and he's finally started to, I think, realize a little bit of his offensive abilities. Last year he had 26 points, so I think he's going to be a 30 to 35 point defenseman, and he's a big guy. So this is a guy I think you probably want to get locked up long term. And I can't say whether Edmonton will do that because getting him signed long term would be the smart thing, and Peter Chiarelli and the Edmonton Oilers don't usually do the smart thing.
All right, so here's another question. There's a bunch of good ones here.
Okay.
Next one is from Steve James. Is Zach Fucale still considered a good goaltending prospect? I'm going to say no.
Yeah, he fell behind Charlie Lindgren with Montreal, and he was in the ECHL for a good chunk of last year. And I don't think that Montreal qualified him, so I think he's a free agent.
I think he might be a free agent. All right, this next one is a great question from Deathskin, which I do like the name, by the way, but it's not DEATH, so it's not. Don't go there. Was it a good decision for? And I'm just going to say the full name, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, to go to the OHL? And I say yes, because I always felt it was stupid that they had that stupid import rule for goalies. I know I said stupid twice. Too bad, because it was really I didn't like it. The fact that he could go play over there, and I think he's playing for Sudbury. Good for him. He'll play a boatload of games. I think it's a smart move. Anybody?
The funny thing is, Russ, I mean, I don't know whether playing time was first of all, Sudbury is not one of the stronger teams in the OHL, so he'll get a
lot of playing time, though.
He'll get a lot of playing time and get a lot of experience. But by him coming over to play in the OHL, he starts the clock. I think he goes back into the draft. He has to be signed to a deal if he hasn't been signed yet by the end of next year, or he goes back in the draft. And I'm just checking to see whether he's signed yet. I don't think he has. No, they did sign him, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so that was probably the Sabres saying, we want you to come over, we want you to play a lot, and that's a good thing for him. I mean, then probably after next year he goes to the Rochester Amerks and plays for them.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good smart move. And Mike, what would it take for the Leafs to get Colton Parayko potentially in a deal?
Oh my! And we talked about this, and Kevin, Kevin said that there's no talk about Parayko being moved. Realistic.
Nor should there.
Unless all of a sudden Doug Armstrong soured on Parayko and thinks that Parayko is no good any longer. I don't understand why St. Louis would trade him. Now, if there's something internal going on that they've soured on him, and I'm looking up his stats right now, he's under contract for next year and an additional 3 years at $5.5 million. And last year he scored 35 points, 6 goals, 29 assists. That's That's pretty good. I mean, he matched the same point total that he had the previous year. He's a consistent 30 to 35 point defenseman. $5.5 million is what you pay. He's big. He's rangy. He's a right-hand shot.
Big all day, Mike.
Yeah. Why would they move him? And that's the only thing I can see is, okay, they need to re-sign Jay Bouwmeester. Okay.
No, they don't need to do that.
Yeah,
that's not a need.
Right.
We could.
Maybe they want to, and Jay Bouwmeester is 34 years old, so you're talking about a 1 or 2 year deal probably. I
mean, if you're a Leafs fan and you're hunting for blue line talent, you're hunting for Jacob Trouba. We've said it 1,000 times. We'll say it again. You could have Trouba for free in 2 years. And not have to give up anything to acquire someone like a Periaco.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing with St. Louis. Toronto has little or nothing of what St. Louis would want. Toronto has a lot of good young forwards. So does St. Louis.
Yeah,
Costin, Thomas, Kyrou. They have a ton of good young forwards.
Yeah,
so the Leafs can't give them that. Garrett? You think Garrett Sparks is going to get you Colton Parayko? I don't think so, but okay, whatever. I'm just saying, there's not. I don't see the structure of a deal. Like there's an area of need that Toronto would be able to save St. Louis or help St. Louis with. So I don't think it's going to be that. I agree with Peter. I don't think they're going to get Trouba in a year, or they might, but they have to pay through the nose. I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to probably plug with veterans for a year or two and then try to get a Trouba or try to get somebody.
Yeah. Toronto Greenhouse, does Edmonton make a deal for Carey Price and young talent to fix goaltending? No. No one's going to make a deal for Carey Price unless Montreal eats a ton of salary.
Yeah, or they take back but remember, if they take back a salary, no salary is going to be as much as Price, and no salary is going to be as long as Price. So,
all right, we do have breaking news here. Too Dope said he was supposed to spell it with 2 O's, but he was drunk at the time that he signed up for YouTube, and it didn't work out. So that's a good one.
You're dope, Too Dope.
He at least explained that.
Thank you.
All right, so here,
this is water.
Doug Wilson has said multiple times that he will add a difference maker either through trade or free agency. What do you think the Sharks ultimately end up landing this year?
Panarin.
There'll be something at the deadline, and I think that's, he tried for Tavares. That's what he was angling for. It didn't work out. I think they'll start with and they will get somebody at the deadline because you also have to see how Thornton's going to be and everything else.
I think Panarin is the perfect fit.
Yeah, I think Panarin's going to be the guy that they try and get. I don't know if they're going to try and get him in the preseason when the price is higher right now because cap is close. Like I don't know where the Sharks' cap number is right this minute.
They have enough space because they carved out the space for Tavares, so they're
they have it enough for a season, really a season, right? I don't know. I don't want to give up the assets if I'm them that they'll have to give in the preseason just to have them for the one season. I'd rather get them as a deadline rental.
This is
exactly.
This is why they have, according to Cap Central or Cap Friendly, they have $20 million in cap space.
Yeah. Wow.
So they have the right assets
at the deadline.
Yeah.
Currently, they have. Because the things can be manipulated. They have about $4.3 million in cap space, so that's still workable because Panarin's making $6 million. So if you trade out something,
if you trade for him and maybe it becomes a rental and it'll be cheaper to do. But the best thing about getting Panarin at the deadline is hopefully you still have a healthy Joe Thornton there as well, and that's why you want him. You don't want to have to
wait.
That's why you have to wait and see where you are. But if you have some injuries, Joe's not there. Which had a big impact for them in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
And you can work on them like you worked on Evander Kane after the deadline. And once they're in Northern California with the coast and San Francisco being an hour away, they'll fall in love, and there you go.
Yep.
Cash Out says Sudbury is greater than every other city in the world. And I don't even know how he says that. I've never been there. I mean, that's
if he's from Sudbury, he's biased, but. Sudbury is the home of Randy Carlisle.
I'm Googling what they're known for, and It looks
They're-
like
They're known for a song by Stompin' Tom Connors.
no.
They're known for nickel.
Yes.
Oh, you know what they're known for?
Nickel.
Smelting. Smelting
Yeah,
and mining.
smelting
Both of those things.
Nickel. Big nickel producer.
Yep.
Yeah, but even if you're doing the nickel part, if I have to deal with the aroma of smelting, no thanks.
Yeah, I believe the Felinos are from Sudbury. I know that Randy Carlisle is, and Joe Bowen, the Hall of Fame announcer, is also from there.
Yeah.
One more question, Russ.
I don't know. Hang on. Let me see if there is one.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just looking up smelting, and the iron ore smell is bad. That's what I thought it was. Okay.
Looking up
Corey
smell.
Stillman's the coach in Sudbury. Hey, we like Corey Stillman. That's fine. Nope, that's it.
Okay. Okay, good show, guys. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz,
Whoever smelled the Delta Sarcasm.
that's hockey.